All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else? And today's video, we are going to branch out of the realm that is the DPS world, and we're going to go into the healer world. So on this video, I am going to be having a discussion with Icy Fire Gaming. From here on out, I will be calling him Icy because that's what he requested, and I will not mess this up. This is a mental note in my head. I'll provide a link in the description to his channel if you want to go check him out and everything. And yeah, we're going to talk about healer stuff. It's been a few years since I've posted a healer build or even really healed well, and I figured it's about time to jump back into the ring, and who better to ask than Icy. Icy, what's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. How you doing?
Doing good. Doing really good. So yeah, Icy and I talked about this in the past. I have a newer account on PC NA, and I don't have a ton of gear, don't have a ton of different classes. I actually only have 3 classes on PC NA. So we're gonna do a Templar healer. He's gonna talk me through a very beginner setup. So this is the goal with this video, isn't to provide you with complete end game rotation with skill, gear, and everything. This is just you want to get into it, you want something competitive, you want something that'll be good, so where you can make a difference, but you might not have access to everything. How do we go about doing that? So that's the goal of the video and this entire thing. So let's dive into it. Icy. I'm a Templar. I'm a Dark Elf. Help me.
Great. Okay, so because this isn't our second or third take or anything like that, I am planning on doing a beginner video to help players that want to get into PvP healing on what the best setup, not gear sets, setup is best to start out healing. And typically it comes down to 2 things, right? Do you want to run a monster set plus 2 heavy, not too heavy, a monster set plus 2 5-piece sets, or a mythic plus 2 5-piece sets? So, is there no one else? Which version would you like to do?
I have more monster sets than mythics, and it's a little bit easier to farm monster sets if I need to. So let's do 2 5-pieces in monster sets.
Excellent. Alrighty, so for the heavy armor set, typically I recommend people running that on their body. We can run with, let me just pull up my script here because I have a little healing piece for beginners already laid out.
Okay.
So for the heavy armor pieces, for craftables, I would either recommend Fortified Brass or Aetherial Ascension. And for purchasable things along the Guild Trader, excuse me, you could run Pariah or Bastion of the Heartland. Both Pariah and Bastion of the Heartland are pretty good damage mitigation sets. I think Bastion of the Heartland is a bit more on the expensive side, and for Pariah, I know it's very popular for everybody and probably the more meta set, so it might be a little bit expensive, but it's also very very easily farmable in Hrothgar, mostly because with the collection system, everybody's trying to farm the world bosses to get all the weapons and things like that, so that one's not too bad to get. And for the craftable sets, both Fortified Brass and Ethereal Ascension, I normally recommend Fortified Brass for beginners or anybody doing like low-level BGs, low BBGs, just because it's very easy. And for Ethereal Ascension, it's definitely the better version of Fortified Brass, but it comes with that 20% cost increase to blocking, roll dodging, sprinting, and break free. So I would only recommend that to advanced players. And for Is There No One Else, I'd probably recommend Ethereal Ascension in this case, just because you've been playing this game for a little while now, so you've been around the block. You know how to roll with the big boys and things like that. So I think you'll be okay with that 20% increase in exchange for having massive amounts of resistances.
Okay. So full disclosure, I have never ran Ethereal Ascension on any of my builds, and I've looked at it quite a bit, and I've tried to find a way to make it work, but like we've talked about on my DPS builds, I'm either blocking or roll dodging quite a bit, and so that is kind of one of those problematic things to where I'm getting CC'd off cooldown every 7 seconds outnumbered, and then I also have to block a ton of incoming damage or roll dodge out of nasty AoEs and everything. Since we're doing Battlegrounds, it's going to be slightly less hectic, so I can definitely see it from that point of view. But in your opinion, the 20% isn't that big of a deal for blocking and dodge rolling and everything for a healer?
Correct. Mostly because I personally run a 7 sturdy setup, so my block cost reduction is very minimal. And I think with just either 4 or 5 sturdy traits, that nullifies the 20% cost increase on Ethereal Ascension. So it's irrelevant at that point. And then for roll dodging, I'll be honest, I never roll dodge on my healer. I normally tell people I roll dodge if it's to get out of a negate or to get out of a Colossus, something that's kind of important to roll dodge. But even then, nowadays I just kind of find myself just holding block and slowly walking out of it, because for whatever reason, whenever I roll dodge, it's already a huge cost increase without the 20%, just because I am in typically a 5 heavy armor setup. But with the 20% cost increase in addition to the heavy armor penalties, it's going to be a lot worse. So try to roll dodge minimally as much as possible.
Okay. Well, yeah. I've been itching to try and find a build to make Ethereal Ascension work, and I've wanted to test this set for forever. So I will start with 5 heavy, sturdy Ethereal, and if I can't make it work, I will go to Pariah. Pariah, like you said, is easily purchasable, and that will be my backup. And so those will be my 2 options for 5 body pieces. Now, guys, keep in mind, like, this is just like starting out. We're only doing crafted or purchasable sets, and we're not really looking at Mythics because not everybody has access to Mythics. So preferably non-DLC monster sets and all that stuff too. This is just like, hey, I want a PvP now. What can I do? Like, how could I get it? Make it easy. That's the goal of the video. So, all right, sounds good. Other crafted set, other set that I can run. What do you recommend?
So for the other 5-piece set, I typically recommend anything that is from the light armor branch, just because it normally has something to help with sustain, like a couple lines of max magicka or a couple lines of magicka recovery. That's kind of what you want to look for. Sure. So for the craftable sets, you can run something like Kagranak's Hope. Shackle Breaker is a very solid option, especially for new players, mostly because it gives you that stamina sustain as well, which will certainly help actually with Ethereal Ascension with those cost increases if you do wind up having a little bit more trouble. Sure. You could also run something a little bit more adventurous, I'll say, and go with Julianos. It doesn't have any lines of magic recovery, which is totally fine and acceptable, but a large part of the playstyle, or my particular playstyle, is heavy attacking, because one, it gives resources, which also helps with your heavy armor bonus, which amplifies your resource return, which is great, and also to proc your major mending, which boosts your healing. So you always want to be heavy attacking when you can to boost your healing and get your resources back. So it will be a little bit noticeable on your magicka if you run sets like Julianos or Combat Physician, because they don't have those lines of magical recovery, but it's not really too much of a big deal. I'll never personally admit to having sustained issues just because I heavy attack so much. Sure.
Okay, and for those of you guys that don't know, I'll provide a little overlay here showing what he's talking about. But with heavy armor, you get higher resource return on fully charged heavy attacks, and major mending is a healing buff, and so you do more healing. The more you're healing, the more resources you're getting on heavies, the less you have to worry about spamming your burst heals, correct? Because your hots are just going to do more of the heavy lifting.
Correct. And I almost forgot about our boy Sheogorath. Shout out to him. You could run Daedric Trickery as well, definitely on the fun side, because it does give you those 3 lines of max stats, but all those major bonuses provide a great amount of utility for a PvP healer, because no matter what you get, they're all going to help you, whether it be major expedition, protection, vitality, or mending, or even the Which one am I missing? Oh yeah, Major
Multi-gen.
Heroism. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, all those would be fantastic to have. So I honestly just take your pick. But for you, just because I know you're another you're another fellow Daedric Prince worshiper, I'd go with Daedric Trickery, to be honest. But if those resource sustain issues start to become an issue, I'd probably swap to Shacklebreaker instead.
Okay. Thoughts on a sustain set? You've already kind of covered it, but thoughts on a sustain set like Seducer, since it's crafted, 2 traits.
For a 2-piece set or a 5-piece set?
For a 5-piece set. So it's 2 trait crafted, so it's really easy to get started. And it's, what is it, 8 or 10% reduced cost on all of your magic abilities? I think it's 10 now.
I think it might be 10, but I
think it's 10.
I could get Veronica, my assistant, and she can look it up here.
And it's just a question, just devil's advocate on sets here.
So it would totally be acceptable. I normally tell people that sets don't really matter. You can pick whatever heavy armor set, pick whatever light armor set,
Okay.
within reason, and it'll totally work, no problem. So to that point, Seducer would be another perfect example of a set that would work here. You could even run, what's that other one? It starts with an M. Magnus Gift.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So whenever you cast a magic ability, which as a healer, almost all your abilities are magica based, you'll get some cost reduction there, which is really nice. So yeah, another set that would equally work as well.
All right, sounds good. So from my point of view, I bow to the Daedric Trickery gods. I'm just a huge fan, and until they introduce the Wabbajack, like, this is all I can fall back on. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Daedric Trickery. I love the healing amounts. I love the ulti-gen. Like so from my point of view, I'm gonna try to make Daedric Trickery work, because then I have more resto ults and I have more ultimates in general, and that can, help support the group as well. And yeah, like, that'll help. I feel like Trickery, although you have that heroism overlap, I'm not very good. I'm not a healer, and so that will help mitigate some of my bad healer tendencies. So if I don't heavy attack enough for major mending or in general, then Trickery's got my back. And yeah, I think we'll start there. And if I need more sustain, then I'll go to Shacklebreaker or Seducer, just kind of depending on what I feel like I need.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's because you said the bad healer tendencies. It's also very important to understand that when you're starting out, whether you have some experience or not, if you're just getting into it, it's okay to run selfish sets when you're learning, right? Yep. And especially if you're doing solo QBGs, there's nothing wrong with it, right? But, once you start to gain that battle experience and you become more comfortable with all of the healer fundamentals and things like that, then you can slowly peel off and run support type sets to help boost the ability of your team as a whole, whether it be spell power, cure, transmutation, gossamer, sets like that.
Yeah, okay. And it, like, we haven't brought this up in this video yet. Healers are a support class. You can't support a group if you don't have resources to support them, or if you're dead. So there's no point in being a healer if you're not good at doing those two things. So there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, like, Icy here, he can get by with these sets, he can get by with this recovery. I need a little bit more. Just swallow that pill of pride and admit it, and make some adjustments for making you the best you until you get better.
100%. Yeah. I just released a build update for my DK healer, which doesn't use any mitigation sets. It's just Harlan's Conqueror and Shock Exoskeleton with Snow Treaders.
Sure.
And I don't personally recommend everybody running that build, just because it's definitely on the high risk reward side, but it works pretty well on a DK because, one, I'm a Nord, so I get some damage mitigation with the resistances there. I am running defensive stance and lingering flare in the back bar for the major protection. And because I have a high uptime with my ultimates, I also benefit from the magma shell, which gives me another form of damage mitigation. So
sure,
you gotta
makes complete sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of give and take with it, but again, I'm trying to have fun. If I didn't want to have fun and just be a tryhard all day, I'll just run Aetherial Ascension or Pariah every game with I don't know, spell power cure. Oh god, so freaking boring. Jesus Christ.
No, I completely understand. So yeah, all right, we got started there. And so you said 5 heavy or a heavy armor set. What are the off trait? Do you go heavy light, one light, one heavy, one light, one medium? Do you do 2 medium, 2 light? What's the other pieces for the armor?
So I know it's very popular in PvE to do a 5-1-1. For PvP healing, for I guess me personally, I typically do either 5 heavy, 2 medium, or 4 heavy and 3 medium, just based on what sets I'm actually running or what type of setup I'm actually running.
Okay.
Commonly, if I'm running an advanced setup, which would be like a front bar, back bar setup, I might wind up with a 4 heavy, 3 medium thing. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll start with 5 heavy, 2 medium, and I'll make some adjustments as needed. All sturdy. Weapons. What's the weapon layout? 2 restos. What are we doing here?
Typically, I run a front bar resto and a back bar sword and board.
Okay, and then as far as the traits,
the resto trait is powered, and the one-hand weapon is defending with a sturdy on the shield.
Okay, sounds good. Enchants, I'm assuming prismatic.
Yep.
Kind of the go-to there.
So prismatic on all your armor pieces, and then for the restoration staff, I run a weapon damage enchant, and then on the back bar, I do absorb stamina for the sword and a prismatic enchant for the shield.
All right, perfect. Jewelry. What are the traits? What are the enchants?
So for jewelry, I typically do on my necklace, infused magic recovery, and then on ring 1, infused magic recovery, and then on ring 2, infused stamina recovery. And I do it like that for a particular reason, because if I was going to swap out one of my rings for a mythic, like we'll take Ring of the Wild Hunt for example, I don't actually change it to infused. I keep it as a swift, so I only suffer by losing 100 stamina recovery in exchange for more speed, simply because if I'm running Ring of the Wild Hunt, I want to be as fast as possible. So sure. I'm okay with losing 100 stamina recovery in that moment.
Sure, makes sense. And so then your second ring is a secondary. So if you want to run, like, let's talk about mythics, I suppose. I'm not going to be running them, but let's bring it up for the video. What are the best mythics you could run on a Templar healer?
So not just a Templar healer, but I think any healer in general. The top 3, or my top 3, would be Snow Treaders for one. I'm actually wearing them right now, and the other 2 would be Wild Hunt or Death Dealer's Fate. Okay. They both, all these sets, all these mythics provide a great amount of utility. All the other ones, you could get away with Gaze of Sithis, but blocking is a huge part of my playstyle, and when you block, you don't. You can't actually block damage when wearing Gaze of Sithis, so it's kind of counterproductive. But if you're running a healer that was more Nightblade-y type of thing, where you're kind of using invisibility as your form of mitigation, or you're roll dodging, then sure, Gaze of Sithis would probably be 4th in slot in this case. And then all the other ones, I don't really think they're too worth it, in my opinion. Okay.
Sounds good. I figure we just bring it up just so we have our bases covered, and people say, oh, but I have everything. What about me? Well, you're special. Congratulations. I'm not. Okay. So don't have to bully me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Monster sets.
So
preferably non DLC. We'll make it easier to access. But what are your top 5 monster sets?
So for top 5 monster sets here, let me just consult my list.
Sure.
Just to make it easier. So for beginner setups, I'd probably recommend either Bloodspawn, Scourge Harvester, Thurvakun, Zols, or Engine Guardian, in terms of sets that would help you give you more survivability, right? Because again, this is for a beginner that's trying to learn, so they need as much forms of damage mitigation as possible, whether it comes in the form of returning more health, returning more resources, or just giving you more resistances.
Sure. And
once you become more comfortable, then you can go a little bit more healing oriented and go with Earth Core, boring, or maybe Choke Thorn, which I think is a little bit more fun. You know, the little guy is kind of cute, things like that. You can run, you know, really any other monster set that you think is going to help you do your job better as a PvP healer. I'm a big fan of Zol's when doing solo queue, just because you want to be able to defend yourself when you get CC'd, especially if you don't have any CCs on your kit for whatever BG that you wind up in.
And for those of you that don't know, Zol is one of the sets you get from Imperial City. I'll provide a little thing so you guys can read the description of what it is, but it's very, very good for classes with powerful burst heals, because when you get CC'd, like hypothetically from a Nightblade trying to incap you from stealth, the minute you CC break, it stuns them, and it kind of gives you that reprieve to pop your Breath of Life or Honor the Dead or whatever your burst heal is, to get back topped off to full rather quickly. And so it is an extremely powerful set for anybody. I know a lot of my friends that do outnumbered 1vx or 2vx run Zol for the same reason, that reprieve is nice. The only issue that you'll have with Zol, from my experience, is if your groups are coordinated and they're trying to line up burst, they have to be careful with that CC cooldown. They have to make sure that people aren't on CC immunity, so that their Dawnbreakers or their CCs are going to go through for their burst combinations. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Engine Guardian is the resource return set, as well as Line of Sight, which is fantastic and annoying at the same time. Bloodspawn, I mean, we don't have to talk about Bloodspawn. Like, everybody should know what that is. Earthgore is obviously good. Chokethorn, when it procs, that person doesn't die. These are all good options. Which one did I miss?
Scourge Harvester.
Scourge Harvester, yeah. Major Vitality.
Yeah.
The set's ridiculous. So,
Yep.
Since I'm running Trickery, I feel like the overlap of Vitality, like, it just doesn't make any sense, I think, to stack Vitality, Scourge, and Trickery. I'm gonna go with Bloodspawn for the ulti-gen. Just so we're gonna start off stacking ulti-gen with this build. If I need the sustain, maybe I'll switch to Engine Guardian.
Yeah, you struck me more as an Engine Guardian type of guy.
I probably, but I don't know if I have Engine Guardian on PC. I know I have Bloodspawn, so we'll go with that to start with, and if I have to go do an Engine Guardian run, I will, and that will obviously, Engine Guardian will ease off any sustain issues I have with Eetherial Ascension. So,
I think there's also an uncalculable, I think I said that right, form of mitigation that the Engine Guardian actually provides.
Yeah.
Right. Just because, you know, people will target it by accident when they're trying to hit you. So I think somebody did some, I was talking about it with Grim, and I think it came out to about like 30% damage mitigation.
Yep.
Off the books. Again, you can't really quantify it, but it came out to about like 33% mitigation just from the Engine Guardian alone.
Yep. Yeah. If people are trying to hit you with single target abilities, they're going to miss a good, we'll just say a good quarter to good third of them. I've heard this similar number. A guy that I was watching on Twitch he was dueling, and he took off Engine Guardian, put it on, and basically found out that he came up with about 25% mitigation. But it depends on what you're running across, right? If you're running across a bunch of spin to win builds, you don't get any mitigation because it hits everybody. But single target builds, yeah, like those Sorks trying to drop meteors. How many times have you seen a meteor hit an Engine Guardian? So
I think when I've been on the offensive and there's an Engine Guardian, I think I might have done that out of spite, where I'll just like drop my single target ult on the Engine Guardian itself, just because I'm so mad or something.
Yeah, and like, as a guy that's played a lot of Nightblade, I can't tell you how many times I've incapped an opponent, had him on the ground, unable to CC break, and I go to hit a spec bow, and the spec bow hits the Engine Guardian, and then I say some words, and I'm not very happy about it, but you know, that is what it is. But yeah, we'll do Bloodspawn first, Engine Guardian second if I need it. Mundus Stone.
Ritual, always.
Ritual. Okay, so that's healing. Makes a lot of sense since you're getting recovery on the jewelry. Makes sense to stack healing. So, yeah. All right, sounds good. And then let's go into the skill layout. Let's start with the Restoration Staff.
Okay, so just gonna pull up my ESO builder here to make it a little bit easy.
Sure. Veronica.
Yeah, Veronica. She's super helpful all the time. So the front bar, my first slot is always Illustrious Healing. Second slot is the second slot on both the front and the back bar I usually reserve for slottables. They're also, I consider, my flexible spots. So for this case, we'll just put in Magelight for now. The third slot, Race Against Time for the Major Expedition and also the the Snare and Immobilization immunity. The fourth slot is Radiating Regeneration, and then the fifth slot is our Major Resolve, which we're getting from Restoring Focus, and then we're using the overpowered Life Giver from our ultimate.
Sure. Okay. And so questions that I have that other people might have are your thoughts against Race Against Time versus Mistform to start with.
I think it just comes down to personal preference. I much prefer running on my feet with Major Expedition than floating around as a cloud.
Okay.
But I think that's that's honestly just personal preference. Right. And it is a toggleable as well. And I don't really I'm not a fan of channeled abilities. So not that Mistform is a channeled one, but it puts you in a different state, which can be interrupted with any of your other abilities. It'll just kind of pull you out of it, which is fine. I think it's just personal preference, but I think they're both equally as good. Yeah. But there's nothing that somebody with Mistform could do that I couldn't do. I mean, if anything, I think I just kind of lack the experience with it because I wind up, or from my personal experience, I think I die more using Mistform than without using Mistform.
Yep. It's very buggy and you have to get used to the bugginess that happens. It took me a while from the changes that they did, but yeah, okay, that sounds good. Any other sort of skills, like let's say hypothetically, well, let me say this in another way. Why Magelight over another skill? Like, why are you, because you brought it up before and I want to have it for this video. Why would you use like just a buff skill over like another heal over time, hypothetically?
So a buff skill. What do you mean by a buff skill?
Magelight provides you Major Prophecy, so you get more crit chance. It's more max magicka, so it naturally buffs your healing, and it also is a utility skill that can pull Nightblades out of stealth. But why would you hypothetically run that over like Combat Prayer? You know, where you're trying to give people in your group or another heal or what, like another heal over time. Why would you consider that one?
So I'm a big fan of my theory that I came up with called too much shit on your bar, where you just have so many abilities, and if you look at it at the end of the day of your BG and you do some self-reflection and you're like, am I even using all of my abilities? Because you can heal your whole team no problem with just 5 abilities, right? 2 ground hots, 2 regular hots, energy orbs and radiating regeneration, and then your burst heal of Honor of the Dead, and then of course you have your ultimates, which is most likely going to be heals, and you can do a bang up job no problem. For the Magelight, or was it Blessing of Protection or Combat Prayer, you can use either of those. They're both going to work no problem, but when you're selecting your abilities, you just want to do it with intent and make sure, okay, when are the opportunities I'm going to use these abilities, right?
Sure.
I'm a big fan of slottables, so I don't mind never pressing Magelight during an entire BG. But if some dude goes invisible right in front of me, I know where I need to push that button next. Okay. But aside from that, you're going to be so busy already as is, working on your PvP healer fundamentals, line of sighting, trying to figure out when to block, reading the map, watching your allies, trying to heal everybody. I don't think you have, the right or the audacity, I'll even say, to worry about pressing another ability. Okay, when you got all these other things you got to work on. So just breathe easy. Take the slottables. There's nothing wrong with slottables. But once you get more experience, for sure, 100%, if you want, slap in. Why did I say slap in? Slap in some other ability that you want. And to your point, yeah, Combat Prayer, totally fine. Repentance, more than acceptable to run in there. Toppling Charge, Javelin, Sawman's favorite, Radiant Oppression. Oh yeah, all those are more than acceptable to run. I think that's my point, Your Honor.
All right, sounds good. Yeah. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and especially starting out, I'm assuming, like you brought up a really good point there. The other good thing you could say is just keep it simple. You know, the old acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And the point is if you're starting out, yeah, I mean, you could potentially run other hots. If you're a better player and you're really good with your rotation, you might not overbuff as much. But especially, and this is just not even taking into account that these like slottables like Magelight give you crit healing. You know, you're going to critically heal more often. It gives you max magicka, so your other heals are going to heal for more. It already has built-in value that way for healing alone, but it also, like you said, pulls Nightblades out of stealth. But it also, if you're a newer player, it's one less skill you have to rotate, which means that your resource sustain should theoretically be better, because then you're not overhealing or overbuffing or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. And if you think about it like this, you have so many abilities on your bar. Let's say you look at your BG that you just did and you never pressed energy orbs once.
Yep.
Then why the hell do you have it on your bar? Might as well have just put a back bar lingering flare on there, so at least you get major protection, since you're not even going to press it anyway.
Makes complete sense. Yeah, and so this is going to come down to probably your personal preferences, right? A few flex spots to, like, maybe not run Magelight, like you said, maybe run Revealing Flare so you have the protection. Like, maybe
100%, yeah. Option. I know one of my Templar build I did, I think back in September, I was running Ironblood as like my full 5-piece that was active all the time. And on my front bar, instead of Magelight, I was actually running Toppling Charge, just to help give me more mobility. So when I get hit with that 50% self-induced snare, I can still gap close and follow my DPS to the target that he was jumping on.
Sure.
So you just gotta be sense. Yeah, you just gotta be adaptable. That's all.
Okay. Sounds good. And then restoring focus is the stamina resource one, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I'm gonna ask the question: why restoring focus as a magicka healer over the stamina one?
So,
sorry, vice versa. Why are we choosing the stamina one as a magicka healer over the magicka one?
So for me personally, I value my stamina pool a lot, mostly because for my 730 setup, I need all that stamina to help provide that mitigation for me.
Sure.
And the last thing I want to do is be so low on stamina where I can't break free, because I've been using it to block the whole time. And I think it's kind of funny because I think I'm the only healer or a person that does a PvP healer build that actually runs the stamina morph, whether it be for the Templar restoring focus or for the Warden using a bull nudge. Every other build I've seen, everybody always uses the magicka version, which I think is just kind of silly, because I don't think you need the extra magicka. I would never admit to having sustain issues just because I heavy attack so often. So the other bonus to having the stamina morph is when you hold block, you actually still regenerate stamina while blocking, because normally your recovery gets halted, but when you're getting another source of stamina coming from Bull Nudge or the restoring focus, it'll still chug through the 0 stamina return from your recoveries, which is pretty nice. So helps give you more blocking potential.
Yep. So what exactly? So restoring focus, it doesn't count as recovery. It does count as resource return. And so whether you're blocking or in misform, you will get the restoring focus proc. So if you choose to use misform, yeah, your recovery is halted, but the recovery from the rune is not. And so that's a good thing to keep in mind. That makes a lot of sense, especially for blocking. Yeah, like if you're going to be block casting a lot, if you're getting focused a lot, that allows you to sustain in that department. And you just have to, like you said, if you're getting all your resource return off heavy attacks running a 5 heavy build, your heavy attacks are going to give you a ton. And so if you can get your hots off and get a full heavy in, or get a Resto ult off, that gives you a lot of chances to top off your magicka, a big window. So
yeah, absolutely. And it also allows you to run 1, maybe even 2 stamina abilities on your bar.
Sure. Well, let's do that. What are we running on the Sword and Board bar?
So for the back bar Sword and Board, the first ability can be Echoing Vigor. That's usually on the Templar. I run either Echoing Vigor, Luminous Shards, or even Living Darkness or Living Dark.
Living Dark,
Yeah, Living Dark. Either of those 3 would be more than acceptable. The second slot is defensive stance for the slottable. The third slot is our Breath of Life. Then the fourth is energy orbs, and then the fifth is extended ritual and our back bar ultimate. You have 3 options: barrier, sturdy horn, or Nova.
Okay. Okay. So we'll ask once again, why are we running Echoing Vigor over other hots? And if you can't sustain with Echoing Vigor, well, you already brought up options for there, so never mind. But yeah, why are we choosing Echoing Vigor here for people that don't know?
So it's just another hot, really, and you can afford to run it on the Templar just because of the restoring focus. I normally would run it, or not normally, I could run it on the Warden as well because the Warden has the Bull Edge. I also run it on my Sorcerer only because she's actually a high elf, and the high elf actually has a passive that'll help me restore some stamina. And if you were actually running a red guard healer, no matter what class it would be, you could also run Echoing Vigor because it's a lot of stamina to expend, especially when your stamina resource is very precious. So the red guard has great stamina return. I think it gives 1,000 stamina every 6 seconds, which is really nice. So,
okay.
But yeah, no, simply it's just another hot. And as you said, if you can't sustain it, then you could run Luminous Shards, which would be a great option, or you could run Living Dark to help give you some more defensive capability.
Okay, sounds good. And then defensive stats, obviously, it's reduce damage while blocking, reduce block cost, and especially if I'm going to be running a set like a Aetherial Ascension, like this is once again another way to help me mitigate incoming block cost. So and block damage. So that makes sense. Orbs, obviously you're going to run the healing orbs, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So you can give resources to your team and also give some hots. But also back to defensive stance real quick. It's great because you get the 10% damage mitigation while blocking, and you get 10% block cost reduction as well.
Yep.
And the way I treat Sword and Board is when somebody jumps on you, we'll say a Nightblade in this case, you always want to jump to your Sword and Board bar because that's where you're going to be the most safe defensively. Okay, that's where you're going to be the strongest in a defensive stance, in a quite literal defensive stance. You never actually have to proc or activate the skill. You just simply use it as a slottable because that is another stamina ability that will eat into your stamina pool. But I'll never ever press it because there's no reason to. So yeah, no, it's definitely great when blocking on your Sword and Board bar.
Yep, that makes sense. And then obviously ultimates are kind of switchable here. You said Barrier, Nova, or Sturdy Horn. Do you want to go into the benefits of all of them so people have an idea for what they would want to use?
Yeah, sure. So for my recipe for ultimate usage is my front bar ultimate is a low cost ultimate, something like Life Giver or the Templar's Incantation ultimate or Remembrance, whatever you call it. And then the back bar ultimate is a high cost ultimate, which would be in this case Barrier, Sturdy Horn, or Nova. And the way I approach it is before the fight starts or when the fight starts, I always open with the back bar ultimate, and then throughout the fight, I always use the low cost ultimate. So I'll always be using Life Giver or Incantation. And then during the fight, if it's a very low pressure situation where I have the advantage, where it's a 2v1 or like a 3v1, that type of thing, then I'll just use that as an opportunity to build more ultimate. So if I'm lucky enough and I save up for a Barrier or Sturdy Horn, then I will use that in the next engagement or whenever I deem it fit. I try not to hesitate when I use my ultimate because I'll see some guys save up to 500 ultimate, which just seems a little bit ridiculous to me. Because even if, say we just finished up a fight and I just got to 250 ultimate and then one person rolled up on us, I'm going to hit Barrier just preemptively. Even though it's a 2v1, I'm still going to hit Barrier against that 2v1 situation because I want my person that I'm supporting to be as secure and safe as possible so that he can stay on his front bar doing as much damage as possible. He doesn't have to worry about hopping to his back bar to do heals or things like that. So that's kind of how my approach to ultimate usage. But in terms of differences, Barrier, a great option for the damage shield, and it also is a hot, which I kind of just learned, funny enough, like just a few months ago. I thought it was just a big heal and that a big shield and that was it. Sturdy Horn, it's a very if you want to be different, okay, I would say use Sturdy Horn. It's definitely really good because it gives you the, I think, 10% on your stamina and magicka resource pool for everybody within the area. And it also gives you how much? 1400 crit resistance, I think, maybe 1600 crit resistance for 12 seconds, which is really nice. And the stamina magicka increase is for 30 seconds, which is really, really nice. And if you think about it, when you increase your max stats, that actually increases your team's damage as well. So another bonus there. Definitely barrier is more meta, but for Nova specifically, I would only use Nova if there was a second support in the group. Then I would come off one of my healing or support abilities and put in something that was a little bit more offensive, just to help us do more damage.
Sure. And yeah, all this makes a lot of sense. I will be doing BGs specifically. And so like what you were talking about earlier, just to piggyback off of it, BGs often has a wait period, because if you wipe a group or whatever, they're on a respawn timer. They got to load back in, they got to run down, they got to run to where you are. And so there's this waiting period. And oftentimes in especially higher MMR BGs, you have what's like third partying. I think that's the term you want to call it, like where you third party invade, like two groups are fighting, you jump in and you pile on top of everybody else. Regardless, oftentimes you're going to get blindsided or sideswiped or whatever. And barrier is that preemptive, like, hey, these ults are coming. You can tell that they're coming. We're gonna top you off before you start taking damage, and that way it gives the DDs, damage dealers, a reprieve to, continue to stay offensive or prepare for, if they weren't ready, you give them that little bit extra so that your heals can go off and whatever. And well, it's a little bit more than a little bit extra, but yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Plus, if you compare it to like practiced incantation, the Templar healing ultimate, which I've always thought was really good, barrier's more mobile. And so you can maneuver yourself. Oftentimes when you're using incantation, you get swarmed down and everybody focuses you because you're the prey hands, you're the umbrella where everybody's living and you're going to get focused super hard. Whereas barrier, you can pop it in line of sight if you need be or whatever.
Yeah, I'm actually not a fan, and I don't recommend or encourage anybody from using the incantation Templar ultimate, just because of that. One, it makes you stationary, okay, and it's a channeled, which means you can't really do nothing during that moment. And I'll be honest, whenever I see people use it, what do? We all gang up on that loser, okay? Yep. You're just a sitting duck, and I hate it. I hate channeled abilities, like the time freeze, especially from the Psijic one, so I'll just use the other morph for it instead. But yeah, I always prefer Life Giver 10 times out of 10. I would like to see from ZOS, however, if they made one of the morphs allow you to be mobile, okay, similar to how the DKs has the standard, but then the other morph is a shifting standard.
Sure.
Seems appropriate if you could like just run and also do the praying hands as well. Oh yeah, 10 times out of 10 I'd use it at that point. I think it'd also be kind of funny looking too. You see a guy running and he's just like praying the whole time.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. All right. We have the gear. We have the skill layout. We don't need to worry about CP because this will be no CP. Bar rotation. Like how do we rotate our skills and abilities here?
So I typically do everything in pairs. So for this instance, your buff bar is 5-on-5, or in the Templar's case, you're building your house, drop your restoring focus, bar swap, animation cancel into extended ritual. And then for your heals, illustrious healing, bar swap into echoing vigor, or you can do radiating regeneration, bar swap into energy orb. I'm a little bit more, I'll say, loose with the radiating into energy orbs. I'll do that most of the time, but sometimes I'll just use energy orb if we're, fighting like on a stairs, and I'll just kind of reposition so I throw the orb up the stairs or down the stairs, or if we're in like a narrow corridor, I just make sure I line it up right so I can throw the orb down the whole path of the corridor, things like that, because you don't want to throw it right into a wall where it's going to disappear in like 2 seconds. So you just got to be a little bit cognizant when you use certain abilities like that. And sometimes if the battles are kind of just so spread out, I'll just be radiating regeneration the whole time, just to kind of give everybody a hot before I kind of decide who am I going to stick with personally in the actual fight. And then, of course, if you see somebody get bursted, if your life giver is up, don't even hesitate to use it. And like, oh no, I'll just hit him with a Honor the Dead by swapping to my back bar and hitting my burst heal. Just use life giver. It's 10 times out of 10 going to be the best option anyways.
Well, that makes sense.
Then of course, and if your life giver is not up, then swap to your back bar and hit your Honor the Dead, no problem. And of course, if you get jumped on, then you'll want to break free and then swap to your back bar and then hit your Honor the Dead. And then while you're healing back up, you also want to start moving to some structure to give yourself line of sight, because you don't want to just be there as a sitting duck getting wailed on while you're just spamming all your magicka trying to heal back up and things like that. You always want to be moving, always want to be mobile and line of sight when possible.
Makes sense. Yeah, like we talked about before, a lot of your heals go through walls, and so take advantage of that. Take advantage of a lot of attacking abilities and single target abilities will not, but your heals will. And so if you can, if you spend the entire time ducked behind a bunker providing heals and abilities, that's less damage you're taking from the enemy, and that's more heals you can provide to your group, because that's less resources you have to expend in that situation. And so people will get mad, but that's not your problem. Your goal is to win, so do what you got to do.
Oh yeah, 100%.
All right. This all makes a lot of sense. Any other tips and tricks? I know this video is long, but this is just hey, you want to heal, you want to do stuff, like what do we got to do? So we're going to make this as, intricate as possible. So is there anything that we have missed in this conversation that you would bring up, like for a beginner?
Light attack and heavy attack when you think there's nothing going on. So if, say, we just finished up a fight and there's nobody around, but then some one guy just like kind of streaks a little bit far in the distance, try to light attack him, because all you need is one light attack to go off, and then that's just going to generate 30 ultimate for you over 10 seconds. So you always want to be building your ult whenever possible. That's one thing. And 2, line of sighting, of course, is very important. Number 3, blocking, very important. I try to block cast all my abilities whenever possible.
Sure.
Number 4, I guess really just map awareness. Try to play smart, but I think that's going to come naturally. The more BGs you do, the more time you put into it, you're going to start learning the nuances of the game and things like that. And being able to read the map, watching your teammates, trying to make the right decision, that type of thing. It just comes with time. And the last thing is, if you are not familiar with, I guess, bunny hopping or just jumping in general, try to do it. If you see somebody doing it, I learn by doing. If I see somebody jumping in a BG, that'll just remind me to jump. So then I'll start jumping just because they're jumping, because, or they say, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So if they're jumping, sure, I'm jumping. And, jumping in itself provides a form of mitigation, because it makes you hard to target with certain abilities that they might be using. So, and I know me personally, if I see somebody jumping, I know that they're an experienced player and I don't mess with them. I give them a level of respect. Okay. So that in itself is a form of mitigation, because him jumping is like, hey, I'm an advanced player. Let's go. And like, nah, I'm good. He's a duelist or whatever. I'm not going to mess with that. So
sure.
Yeah, that would be my top tips. Light attack for ult gen, line of sight, block cast when capable, try to use your brain and play smart, and bunny hop when possible. Yeah.
All right, so to piggyback off of this and to reiterate some things, the reason we want to be doing light and heavy attacks, obviously, like you said, light attacks are form of ult gen and sustain. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. Also procs your enchants, so you get more weapon and spell damage with your Resto Staff. With your 2H, or your 1H, sorry, we're not running a 2H. You get a little bit more stam return when you're light and heavy attacking with that due to the enchant. So you want to have those going. if you guys are going to copy the same build that I'm going to be doing, where I'm running Trickery, Ethereal Ascension, and Bloodspawn, in order to proc Trickery, you need to be doing damage every 9 seconds to proc a buff. And so it's also very important. Trickery does nothing for you if you're not applying some damage to proc Trickery. And so that's the one thing that people have an issue with the set sometimes, is you don't get anything until that starts happening. And so it's very important for that. And obviously, like, heavy attacks with the Resto Staff gives you major mending, like Icy said here. And so you want to be trying to get those to make your heal over times as juicy as possible, and keeping yourself topped off. Because yeah, you might not be, maybe you're at half resources right now because nobody's around. You just wiped the group, and they're going to come back. You might as well try and get to full resources before the next big fight comes, so that you can stay alive as long as possible. Because the worst kind of support build is a dead support build. You're not helpful if you're dead. So you want to try and stay alive as long as possible. And so yeah, those are really good tips. As far as the bunny hopping thing, the other things that I will say, because I've had this conversation a lot on this channel, it upsets people. You see it all the time you see it all the time on the forums, or people are like, oh, this guy's jumping around. He's just jumping around like an idiot. Well, if people aren't going to focus on what they're doing, and they're going to get upset at you doing a very minimal thing like jumping around, and it's going to get them off of like how they play, you should do it. Like, if something that's simple, on top of the line of sight things, like yeah, it's harder to target somebody jumping, but if it's also going to upset them and they're gonna go tunnel vision, you should do it and get them playing differently. It'll allow you to get wins. For me, I jump around a lot because it keeps me active. If I'm jumping, I know I'm more active in my abilities. I know I'm a little bit more focused, and it allows me to play a little bit better. I know that's not for everybody, but that's part of the reason why I jump, is because it keeps my reactions a little bit better and more crisp, I guess.
Yeah, no, 100%. I didn't realize that people actually get mad when you're jumping around. Yeah,
you'll hear it. Like, I've been in groups and they're like, look at this guy thinking he's so good jumping around. And they get so angry. If you want a good laugh, go on the forums and look up like jumping. Like, there's so many forum posts where people believe that jumping should cost stamina, because they get so upset about these people jumping around. They're like, they're just jumping around. It doesn't do anything. We should make it cost stamina, make it more realistic, because they're so tired of people jumping.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I've seen at least 4 or 5 different threads of why jumping should cost stamina. So
Jesus, that's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah. So I will say it. Icy will say it. Jump. Seriously. Like jump around. You're going to upset people. And it's not in a toxic behavior. You're just getting them off their game. If they're going to get upset about something that you're doing, that's on them. That's not on you. So do what you got to do to get people to not play properly, and you will benefit because of it.
Since you tell that story, it kind of reminds me how, with Spider-Man, the reason why he's such a jokester in all of his fights that he does with his villains is because it puts them off their game, right? Just making these stupid comments, right? And they're just like, whether it affects them or not, it's getting in their head to some degree, and they're gonna slip up, and then that's kind of how he is always on top all the time. So kind of making a little comparison there. Yep,
exactly. You look at famous trash talkers across all sports. Like, there's a reason they trash talk. There's a reason they do what they do, and yeah, it's to upset the other person and get them to think about, when you're angry, you don't think clearly. And so it doesn't matter how angry it is. Like, if you're just a little annoyed, you're not going to think as clearly as you would if you weren't. So it's very, very beneficial. So.
Oh yeah, 100%. Use all the resources that you can, especially when this doesn't even require you to put on a set or anything.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost stamina to jump yet. So we'll see if they can get that switch in the future, but it would be silly if they did. But yeah, that is a long video, but it's very informational. I'll obviously provide timestamps so you guys can skip around for stuff that you know or don't know or whatever. But I feel like this is really informational, and yeah, Icy, if you're cool with it, I do want to do more in the future. There's a few classes I haven't done healer builds on, and so we can do individual based stuff like this. And guys, you should go check out his channel. He's got healer builds for every class. He's got videos like a tier system where he rates different classes and how good they are for healing and for different things. And so if you guys want to try off meta healing and stuff, you can look at, he's a really good resource for trying to find stuff that, you know, maybe you wouldn't think of running. Like Mag DK healer, for instance, isn't something that's meta, but what can you do to make it a Mag DK healer as effective as possible if that's what you want to do? So
yeah, no, I don't want to go on a rant because I know we're about to close, but if they just change, what the hell is that ability called? Obsidian Shard? Yeah, I know I said it in my tier list video, but if they just change Obsidian Shard to Obsidian Shards, and then they just make the same animation as the Nightblade Healer's Healthy Offering or Resistant Flesh from the Necro, right, where it's like a conal type of ability, then DK healers would be legit. There wouldn't be, I wouldn't have to run Coagulating Blood for my burst heal and then cauterize for your burst heal, okay, to be able to support you or my team in that way. So yeah, you know, one can wish. So we'll see what happens in 2023.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right, well, sounds good. We will keep this video under an hour, so it's very short and quick and to the point. But thank you for stopping by, Icy. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you again.
All right, sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, take it easy.
See ya.